It's recap time. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode blank of the Shower Podcast, the podcast where I'm in my shower and you do you. I'm your host, Chip, and these, together with the following episodes, I still haven't decided on the exact number, will be a bit of an experiment. So let me explain a bit what I want to do here. I've been playing around with this tool that I found online called Notebook LM by Google that lets you feed it with videos, texts, information from the internet, and it kind of gives you the chance to chat and extract information from these videos. Out of curiosity, since now we produced more than 80 videos, I was like, okay, let me try to feed my videos to this tool and see what comes out of it. Specifically, there is a very, very, very intriguing option of creating a sort of podcast out of the information that you send that analyzes, describes, and summarizes the info that it's present in those videos. And now, something that, it's normal because, everybody has their days and you might have to do your stuff. You might have lost or just were not necessarily interested in a specific episode. And what I want to do here, since that unfortunately I will also be out for a few days and I feel like I need a bit of a moment of inspiration, because again, if you have followed the last episodes, you'll understand why, but I need a bit of a fresh start. So I was like, why not use this opportunity to create this tool, give you the chance for a recap, and continue with my progress towards the 365 episodes. I think it's a fair, let's say, trade-off between me bringing actual content that inspires me and you being able to actually think back on the episodes that we did and make sure to maybe go and listen again to the original one, trying to get the insight you were looking for. I won't go any further with this intro. I just wanted to throw it out there. Hope you like it. We'll start from the start up to episode 82. So maybe up to episode 80. I will keep I'll see how to divide it. But here we are. Enjoy it. Hope you will like it. And see you at the next one.
Okay, so we're diving back into Chip's Shower Podcast today. And specifically those recent episodes, 11 through 15. Digging deeper into some of the themes he's been exploring, kind of connecting the dots and seeing what resonates with you guys out there.
Yeah, sounds like a solid plan. Always interesting to see how these seemingly separate ideas might actually be linked in some way.
Exactly. And sometimes those connections really hit you and you take a step back and see the bigger picture,
Absolutely.
So let's start with episode 11, which jumps right into the whole concept of goals.
Goals. Always a relevant topic, right?
For sure.
So in this episode, Chip lays out this scenario. A streamer finally hits his goal of 110 points in this game.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, at that point, the threshold for winning was 100 points. So he had actually already surpassed it.
Oh, nice. So he was already in the clear, basically.
Exactly. But here's the catch. The threshold could still change before the season actually ended.
Oh, so there's this added layer of uncertainty. Like, he's achieved it, but he's not quite sure if it's going to stick, right?
Exactly. And that's where the dilemma kicks in. Does he stop playing, enjoy that feeling of internal satisfaction of having reached his goal?
Right.
Or does he keep pushing, risking that achieved position for the chance at, a higher rank, that external validation?
Oh, that's a tough one. I can see how that would really mess with your head.
Yeah, it's like, do you play it safe and lock in what you've got, or gamble for something potentially even better but risk losing it all?
Exactly. It really makes you question, what does it actually mean to achieve something?
Right, and I think that's what Chip is getting at with that big question he throws out there. What really makes you a winner?
Yeah.
Is it just hitting that predetermined target, that number, that specific outcome?
Right.
Or is it about the effort, the growth, the entire journey you went through to get there?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I think a lot of us, naturally, we tend to fixate on that end result.
Mm-hmm.
you know?
We do, we do. But Chip seems to be leaning more towards like the value of the process itself.
Yeah.
You know, he emphasizes that all the growth, the lessons you pick up along the way, they have real weight, even if you don't hit that initial target you set out for.
I like that. Because sometimes life just throws you a curveball, right?
For sure.
Like you can put in all the work, all the effort, and things just, don't go according to plan.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty universal experience, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it's kind of comforting to hear that, that doesn't invalidate the journey you've been on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties in with this idea that outcomes are often unpredictable anyway. Like you can make projections and plans, but there are always factors outside of your control.
Right.
And that's where I think Chip's advice to appreciate the journey, to focus on building something for yourself in the present moment, becomes really powerful. It's almost like a shift in mindset, not getting too hung up on a future outcome that you can't fully guarantee anyway, but rather, finding meaning and purpose in the process itself.
Mm-hmm. It's about, like, taking ownership of your growth, regardless of whether you hit those external markers of success or not.
Exactly. So from goals, we transition to a different kind of achievement in episode 12.
Happiness.
Yep. Happiness.
Which I think is something we're all striving for in one way or another.
Absolutely.
And in this episode, Chip starts off by just like straight up saying, hey, I'm happy today, which is kind of refreshing, just putting it out there.
Yeah, it's nice to hear someone just own that feeling, right?
Totally. And then he goes on to break down like what contributed to that happiness. And it's surprisingly simple stuff.
Yeah, it's not like these grand gestures or extraordinary experiences.
Right.
It's more like enjoying his breakfast, watching some videos, connecting with people, everyday things.
Yeah, things that we all do or at least have access to.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point he's making here, that happiness isn't this elusive prize that only a few get to experience,
Right. It's not reserved for like lottery winners and people who are, riding dolphins in Brazil or something.
Exactly. It's more about finding those moments of joy and contentment in the ordinary, the everyday things.
Yeah.
And Chip really emphasizes how incorporating those small, enjoyable things into your daily routine can actually lead to a greater sense of tranquility and well-being.
Mm-hmm. It's like instead of waiting for happiness to strike, you're actively cultivating it through those little things.
Yeah, and I think that ties in with this idea of mindfulness, which is something we hear a lot about these days, right?
Absolutely. Being present, being aware of those small things that bring you joy and actually making time for them.
Yeah, and not just brushing them aside because they seem insignificant compared to, achieving some big future goal.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting how Chip connects this to work as well.
Yeah, the whole job satisfaction thing.
He actually suggests that finding a job you're really good at, even if it wasn't your initial passion or whatever, can bring you a lot of happiness.
Oh, interesting.
Like he talks about how that sense of accomplishment, of being competent in something, can actually breed enjoyment.
Yeah, because you feel valuable, like you're contributing something meaningful, right?
Exactly. And he gives this great example of reaching out to his skilled friends for help with his podcast and how much happiness that brought both him and his friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. It's like this win-win situation where everyone's leveraging their strengths and feeling good about it.
Yeah, and it reinforces that idea that happiness often comes from these human connections, from collaborating and supporting each other.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of brings us back to that point about social circles.
Yeah.
Chip emphasizes the importance of having that small, close-knit group of people who really get you and support you.
Yeah, it's like having that safe space where you can just be yourself, right?
Exactly. And I think that's crucial for overall well-being.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, happiness isn't just about achieving things in isolation. It's also about those meaningful connections we have with others.
Absolutely. And it kind of creates a nice link back to episode 11 as well.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, think about those daily enjoyable things Chip talked about.
Yeah.
Like having a good breakfast, connecting with friends, pursuing your hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
They can actually be seen as these mini goals in themselves, right?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like instead of focusing on these big, long-term, potentially uncertain objectives, you're setting these small, achievable goals each day that contribute to your overall sense of well-being.
Right. So it's like reframing goal setting to be more integrated into your daily life, bringing those little bits of happiness and accomplishment into the present moment.
Exactly. And that's a pretty cool way to look at it, I think.
I agree. Okay, so from goals and happiness, we jump to a seemingly contradictory topic in episode 13, Be Lazy.
Haha, yeah, that one definitely caught my attention too. Like, wait, what? Is Chip actually advocating for laziness?
It does sound a bit counterintuitive, right?
There.
But then he starts off by sharing his own experiences with, like ordering more takeout and feeling lazy after work or exercise.
Yeah, relatable stuff. Like, who hasn't been there? Right.
Exactly. But then he makes this really important distinction. Laziness isn't inherently bad. It's what you're doing or not doing with that downtime that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like, are you just vegging out with no real purpose, or are you using that time to recharge and refocus on something else that's valuable?
Exactly.
Right.
Like with the takeout example, Chip wasn't just being lazy for the sake of it. It was more about freeing up his time and energy for other things he considered more productive.
Right, like editing his podcast or taking care of those online tasks.
Yeah, so it was a conscious choice about how to allocate his resources, you know?
Mm-hmm. Choosing to be lazy in one area so he could be more productive in another.
Exactly. And then he brings up this really interesting point from Jordan Peterson, that whole thing about university not being the right path for everyone.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Peterson's idea is that the key is finding a challenging and growth-oriented alternative, right?
Something that pushes you and allows you to develop in meaningful ways.
And I think that parallels really well with this idea of purposeful laziness.
Yeah, it's like what might seem like inactivity on the surface could actually be someone strategically redirecting their energy towards other pursuits that they find valuable.
Right. So it's not about embracing laziness in all its forms, but rather about being intentional with your time and energy.
Exactly. Using those moments of laziness to recover, gain time, or create an advantage elsewhere.
So the takeaway here is be lazy with a purpose.
Yeah, make it work for you.
Okay, so from the somewhat controversial topic of laziness, we move on to a more tangible object lesson in episode 14, a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah, the coffee cup analogy. I like that one.
Yeah, it's surprisingly profound for such a simple thing.
It is. It is.
Chip uses this habit he has of sometimes leaving his coffee cup unwashed, even though his kitchen is otherwise clean, to illustrate these two contrasting approaches we often have towards the things in our lives.
Yeah, like on one hand, we might treat things casually because we think they're abundant, replaceable, no big deal.
Right.
And on the other hand, we might treat those same things with more care and attention as if they were scarce and precious.
Exactly. And I think the anecdote he shares about breaking his favorite coffee cup really hits home.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Because it highlights how we often don't fully appreciate something until it's gone,
It's like that saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Exactly. And it makes you think, do we have to wait for that loss to actually value the things we have?
Right, whether it's material possessions or relationships or even opportunities.
Yeah, because that coffee cup becomes this metaphor for so much more.
It does. It makes you question how you're approaching, not just the things you own, but also your job, your health, your relationships with people.
Are you taking them for granted, assuming there will always be more?
Yeah, or are you treating them with the care and attention they deserve?
And his advice is pretty straightforward. When you have the time and ability, choose the action that benefits your future self.
Treat your coffee right, as he says.
Exactly. Don't go for that immediate gratification if it might lead to some negative consequence down the line, even if it seems small.
Yeah, it's like those little habits of mindfulness and thinking ahead.
Because ultimately, those small choices accumulate and shape our lives in the long run.
For sure. Like, ignoring that one coffee cup might seem insignificant, but if you're constantly neglecting those small things, it can create a pattern of, bigger problems later on.
Absolutely. So from coffee cups and mindful choices, we arrive at the concept of bubbles in episode 15.
Bubbles. That's a good one for the times we're living in, right?
Yeah, especially with how online everything has become.
So, Chip is basically talking about bubbles as both our immediate social circles and those online environments we inhabit.
Right. And he points out how certain viewpoints and topics can dominate within those spaces while being completely foreign outside of them.
Yeah, it's like living in these little echo chambers where everyone's agreeing and reinforcing each other's beliefs.
And it can be easy to forget that there's a whole world of different perspectives out there.
Absolutely. And Chip, with his diverse background and interests, has had a lot of experience navigating different bubbles throughout his life.
Yeah, he's kind of seen it all.
So he's got this unique perspective on how something that's considered super important in one group might be completely irrelevant in another.
And he gives that example of the Joe Rogan and Zuckerberg podcast.
Oh, yeah, the one where they were talking a lot about politics.
Mm-hmm. And he contrasts that with his own personal experiences, where politics aren't really a dominant topic of conversation.
Right, and it highlights how certain topics, like politics, can become so central to the identity of a particular bubble that it's almost impossible to escape.
Yeah. And the internet, especially with communities like Twitch, can create these incredibly specific and self-contained bubbles.
For sure, they have their own culture, their own language, their own set of concerns.
And it's easy to get so caught up in those dynamics that you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
But I think Chip's main point here is the importance of being aware of those bubbles and what happens when you step outside of them.
Yeah. What new information do you encounter? What challenges your own assumptions?
Because the natural human tendency, especially within these echo chambers, is to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs, right?
Yeah, that's called confirmation bias, and it's a powerful force.
And it can make it really hard to be open to ideas that challenge our worldview.
Mm-hmm. But Chip really stresses the importance of intentionally popping those bubbles,
Yeah.
being open to new ideas, engaging with different viewpoints, even if they make you uncomfortable.
Because otherwise, we risk developing this really narrow understanding of the world, missing out on valuable learning experiences and opportunities just because they lie outside our current frame of reference.
Exactly. It takes a certain level of intellectual humility to be able to step outside of your comfort zone and really listen to perspectives that are different from your own.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's where the real growth happens.
Yeah, I agree. So when we look back at these 5 episodes together, we see this really interesting progression of ideas.
Yeah. Chip starts with our relationship with goals, both external and internal.
Then delves into the pursuit of happiness, emphasizing the importance of finding those little joys in everyday life.
Then there's that surprising exploration of laziness, encouraging us to be more intentional with our time and energy.
And then that coffee cup analogy, highlighting the significance of mindful actions and thinking about the long-term consequences of our choices.
And finally, the concept of bubbles, urging us to broaden our perspectives, engage with different viewpoints, and challenge our own assumptions.
It's like this journey of self-discovery and expanding your understanding of the world.
Yeah. And Chip consistently brings it back to this core idea of self-awareness, making conscious choices, and finding personal meaning.
Right. It's not just about passively accepting things as they are, but actively shaping your life and your worldview.
So for you, the listener, think about the different bubbles you inhabit.
What perspectives might you be missing out on?
And what are those seemingly small cups of coffee in your life that deserve more of your attention, that could actually have a big impact on your well-being and your understanding of the world around you?
Because it's a continuous journey of learning and growth.
And Chip's podcast provides some really great food for thought along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it.
All right. Thanks for diving in with us.
Anytime.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
See you then.